And the clock strikes 5 minutes past the hour, so I think it's time for us to get started. Good afternoon to those who have joined since I last addressed everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. And I'm going to do my absolute best to make this an exciting and engaging session for you. And thank you for joining and giving me your time. To those of you who I have not met yet, my name is Stephanie and I am one of the anatomists from Learning Curve, and my job role is to support staff and students in using Primal Pictures, which really is an incredibly helpful tool when it comes to health sciences education. Today, our focus is going to be exploring a new release by Primal Pictures, which is the Anatomy Learning Outcomes for Medicine. And this has been crafted for a variety of reasons, and we will get to those later on. But I want to highlight the fact that even if you don't have access to this title yet, during the session, we will touch on content that most of our clients do have access to. So you will receive some nuggets of training on content you already have. And all of you are welcome to a free 30-day trial to this new content for you to dive into it and assess whether it's something you would want to implement in your environment or not. I know on our registration form, most of you have indicated that you would like access to a trial. So we will follow up with all of you via email after this, and we can get that set up for you if that is something that you would like. If you have any questions as we go through the session, please pop them in the chat box. I will ask you that once we dive into the actual platform to rather stay muted, just so we can run everything smoothly, but you're welcome to unmute yourself during the Q&A session at the end. And before we jump into the platform, I am also just going to ask some questions to our group of attendees. And at that point, I'd really love if you unmute yourself and give me some feedback, but I'll guide you along the way. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy. The agenda, what I will take you through today is firstly discussing the support you have available to you if you don't know this already. We want to make sure you are supported in your use of Primal Pictures. Then we will recap the basics of access to the platform if you're a little bit confused on how to do that. And we'll discuss on and off campus access and how to download some of the apps which allow you to use the content fully offline, which is very important. Then I want to discuss some of the challenges we face in anatomy education, which quite heavily relate to the new medical curricula that we've seen coming out across the world, but absolutely in our South African setting recently. And then we'll dive into the new release by Primal, which is the Anatomy Learning Outcomes for Medicine. Okay, so firstly, the support you have available to you. We really want to make sure you and your students are empowered and can use the power of Primal. So you have access to our team of anatomists. That includes myself and Nithya from Learning Curve. Our Primal Pictures email address is at the bottom of these slides. Please never hesitate to reach out to us if you would like to book a staff training session, whether that's a one-on-one or a group staff training session, as well as group student training sessions. Pre-training for students before they start their anatomy modules is really, really important. So if your students have already started their anatomy modules and they haven't been trained, please chat to us about setting up one of those sessions, and these services are free of charge and form part of your institutional subscription. There is also a Primal Pictures technical team. So if it's after hours and we're off the clock and you're having any technical issues, or you'd like to reach out to Primal Pictures directly, their client services email address is on the screen. And then we also have our social media channels, which host a range of different content from fun to educational resources. So this is a little bit of a joke. Our handle on all of the platforms is anatomy_sucks. And we use these platforms to show students that anatomy doesn't suck. So on Instagram, that is where we advertise our free monthly webinars. Just like this staff session, we also have free student sessions once a month. On our YouTube channel, we have long form webinar videos as well as short, punchy, easy to follow title-specific training videos, and I'll show you some of those later, which are really great for embedding in your LMS to support your students. And then lastly, on TikTok, this is mostly to appeal to the students. We just have some fun. We relate to how difficult it is being an anatomy student. We show them tips and tricks on how to enjoy anatomy and make it easier. And there we're just trying to engage with the community and make sure that they have the support and the fun that they need. Anatomy doesn't suck, so we try our best to show them that. Okay, our March student webinars will start next week. Those you can find in the link in our bio on Instagram. If you'd like us to resend you the links to register to these webinars for your students, pop it in the chat box or email us and we can resend those through to you. But now let's recap how to access this platform. Firstly, the platform is mostly web-based and your starting point is always the website, which is anatomy.tv. Most of our clients are set up with IP authentication access. That's a fancy way of saying that if you're on campus and connected to the university Wi-Fi, you can go directly to the website, which is anatomy.tv, and you will be logged straight in. When you are off campus and you're not connected to the university Wi-Fi, you will need to access this resource through your library website, and it should be listed under your online databases available to you through your library website. Now, I don't want to confuse you, but some of our clients are set up purely with username and password. If this is your case, you should be aware of this. But if I've created any confusion and if you don't know how to access, email us, pop it in the chat box, and I'll make sure we iron out all of those creases. Then, with Primal Pictures being mostly a web-based application, Primal and Learning Curve are very aware that offline capabilities are very important. So firstly, if your learning management system is 0 data rated for your students, Primal has a wonderful embed function. You can embed the 3D dynamic, wonderful content in your learning management system, and the students can engage with it in that way. Most of the content is also downloadable, which allows students to use it offline, and it allows you to place it into your PowerPoints, your Word documents, your study guides, your tests, anything you want to. If you have an institutional license, you also have the necessary copyright licensing to do whatever you want with the content within your institution. Then some of the titles do have mobile apps available for download, which allows you to use the content fully offline. What's very exciting is the 3D real-time title. That's our virtual dissection table. There's an app available for that. So you and your students can view all visible structures of the human body in these beautiful 3D models fully offline. If you're not aware, Primal Pictures 3D models are built from real scan data. So you will have a full male and female body donor, their 3D anatomy on your screen, where you can explore the anatomy, virtually dissect. And in the app version, it also has augmented reality capabilities, which means you can project the 3D models into your environment. Really amazing. It's really amazing for superimposing it on a person, an articulated skeleton, a body donor, to help understand underlying anatomy and the relationship between surface anatomy. We do have an easy PDF guide on how to download these apps. If you would like me to email you that PDF guide, please, in the chat box say, PDF guide, please, pop your email address, and I'll email that to you after this session. And it's also really helpful to share that with the students so they set up for success for the app and offline capabilities. Okay, but what I would like to discuss is the renewed medical curricula that we see internationally. And before I dive too deep into medicine, I just want to say that the content we're going to explore today is translatable across all health sciences. So if you are from nursing or physiotherapy, please don't sit here and think, wait, hang on, now this is irrelevant for me. It's not. When we dive into the content later on, you will see the application for you. So now just discussing these renewed curricula, We have seen a major shift, and these new curricula tend to have two key factors in common. Number one, a shift towards student-orientated learning with early clinical skill development. We've noticed that universities want students to guide their own learning and work through their own problems, which is very important so that they can problem solve when they are clinicians and work through their own stumbling blocks. Number two, we've seen this curriculum being developed to meet the diverse needs of our South African healthcare ecosystem. We have a very unique situation here in South Africa, and it's important that the curriculum speak to the environment in which our students will then practice as clinicians. So we've seen emphasis on student independence. We've seen a wonderful shift to focusing on health and well-being, not just for the patients, but also for the students. And the new curricula also seem to focus on the development of clinical skills and research skills as soon as possible. We see that these curricula tend to deliver the basic sciences early on in the first 2 years of the curriculum, with some integration of clinical skills, but we have seen that the clinical focus is then on the later years. So there are a range of challenges that we face when delivering anatomy education, not just here in South Africa. And through our teaching experience and then our experience with providing and training Primal pictures, we found a few trends. We've seen that anatomy contact teaching time is decreasing. There's limited and costly access to body donors and dissection. I'm very traditional in believing that body donor dissection will always be the greatest teacher in anatomy. But this is limited, it's expensive, and the students can't, shouldn't, and won't take their body donors home. It's illegal and unethical and smelly. But it's important for students to be able to learn accurate 3D from the comfort of their own homes. Students also have quite a lot of anxiety when it comes to body donor dissection. It's also difficult to engage the students in these subjects because they find anatomy overwhelming and some of them don't enjoy it, but it is the core foundation when it comes to health sciences. So it's an incredibly important subject. We also have found that the students don't enjoy death by PowerPoint. It's how education has traditionally been delivered, but we need to shift our strategies to make sure our students are engaged effectively and learning properly. And anatomy is expected to be known not only several years later in their studies, but for the rest of their practicing career. But sometimes the students feel a bit lost on, wait, how can I revise my anatomy? I've finished my anatomy modules, I passed them, but I don't remember everything. How do I revise? So today I'm going to address how we can try and solve some of these challenges. But I'd like to quickly open up the floor for some discussion. I'd like to hear from you if there is a challenge that you are currently facing that I haven't addressed. So please feel free to unmute yourself and let me know if you have a challenge that I haven't mentioned. You're welcome to pop it in the chat box if you don't feel comfortable unmuting yourself, but please feel free. This is a safe space to share your experiences. Okay, I see there's a bit of typing in the chat box. I will keep my eye on that and try and address whatever I see. But I'll ask one last time, just in case anyone's a bit confused on how to unmute yourself. Any challenges that you would like us to discuss and try and address in the session today? Okay, I'll move on for now, but please feel free to pop any of those challenges in the chat box And like I said, the challenges that we are aware of, I will do my best to address while we go through the content. Okay, so moving on to what we are mostly going to discuss today, and that is the new release by Primal, which is the Anatomy Learning Outcomes for Medicine. So let's start with some context and some history. The Anatomical Society of UK and Ireland developed 156 anatomy learning outcomes for medicine, which were published in the Journal of Anatomy. The most recent publication was its second rendition of these outcomes, because they did really streamline them, and they used a Delphi process, including a panel of experts, to make it incredibly clear what anatomy needs to be known by a medical student. This is here to guide educators, but also to help students know exactly what they need to know. Primal saw a huge value in these outcomes, and they then wanted to create content that explains each of these outcomes in a simplified manner, but also in a very engaging manner. So Primal licensed these outcomes from the society, and along with the society's editorial board, they formed a panel of international experts, nearly 50 from around the world, including some South African contributors, whom we are very proud to see represented. And for each of these outcomes, they created that explanatory and engaging content to explain the outcome. For each outcome, you will see an explanatory video. They're usually short, between 5 to 15 minutes. Some of them are a bit longer, like the radiology ones. And after that explanatory content, there's a range of embedded 3D, dissection, functional, clinical content to further the students' understanding of the outcome and allow them to self-explore in their learning process. As I mentioned earlier, this is not just relevant to the medical curriculum. Anatomy is a universal language when it comes to the health sciences. So the content that I'm going to show you today can also be applied to all health sciences disciplines. You may just need to pick and choose which outcomes you use and you assign to your students. Okay, but I don't want to give you death by PowerPoint today. I do see that there have been some comments in the chat box. Thank you very much for that. I see that someone has mentioned workload, it's a lot to cover, and they find the anatomical terminology overwhelming, and I can very much empathize with that through my lecturing experience. And I think that speaks nicely to this new content. It's here to try and simplify and break down what the students need to know so that they don't feel overwhelmed. Okay, but I'm now going to change which screen I'm sharing, and we're going to jump into the Primal Pictures platform. Okay, before we get into the module for today, let's quickly rediscuss how to access Primal Pictures. And just a reminder that if you are on campus and connected to the university Wi-Fi, you can go directly to the website, which is anatomy.tv. And if you are connected to the Wi-Fi, you will be logged straight in. Now, if you are off campus or not connected to the university Wi-Fi, then you will need to go through your library webpage. So I'm going to show you a very quick example of this. Let's say I'm from Stellenbosch University. So I'm going to Google Stellenbosch University website. And if I am off campus, I want to find my library's e-databases. Now, under this alphabetical list, it may be listed under A as anatomy.tv. That's the website. It's the same thing as Primal Pictures, and I'll click on this to have off-campus access. It may also be listed under P as Primal Pictures. Okay, if you have any problems with your access, again, please pop us an email and we will help you out. So that is how you access. Just to quickly recap navigating your homepage, if you are new to Primal Pictures, on the left-hand side of your All Titles dashboard tool, you will have all of the titles available to you at your institution. You can customize your dashboard by creating a personal profile. That icon is available in the top right-hand corner. It will walk you through the process. It's nice and easy to set up. But once you set that up, you can get content recommended to you based on what you teach or what you study. Here I'm getting information recommended for radiology. And then you can also favorite titles as well as view your recently viewed content. Okay, this is just still loading over here. The next tab is the Learn tab. Most of you currently won't have that available because this is where we find the anatomy learning outcomes for medicine, which is the new release, and this is what we'll discuss today. But you will have the rest of the tabs available to you to help you find content. You can browse through all of your available content, either by the regions of the human body. You can take a systemic approach. You can filter through the types of media or the titles, which is the same as this list of titles over here. Then, just like a traditional textbook, you will find an alphabetical index, but when in doubt, search it out. There is a search pane for you to look for anything specific. So let's look for the pancreas today. And after I search that, I will have all of the available content to me relating to the pancreas in different media forms. And you can open up multiple search panes and search for multiple structures or pieces of information and toggle between your workflow. Okay, but now let's dive into what we're going to discuss mostly today, the anatomy learning outcomes for medicine. So as I mentioned, these outcomes were published in the Journal of Anatomy. Let's quickly zoom in a little bit more so that hopefully you can see everything nice and clearly. Here is a link to that journal article if you would like to send us, if you would like us to send you the journal article, please put the question in the chat box with your email address. And again, we'll send that over to you. But here we have the outcomes, which are broken down by regions of the human body, with the inclusion of anatomical terminology, which is the basics before a student naturally starts either a regional or systemic approach to anatomy. So for each outcome, I can see if I haven't started it. Here, if I can click start because I haven't started this overview. This first outcome, you can see it says continue because I've started working through it, but I haven't finished it. And this third one, you can see it says completed, but I can always revisit at any stage. And we can see the educator who is going to walk us through this outcome. For today's example, I want to take quite a complicated piece of anatomy because I think it is a good showcase of how this content can really simplify some of the more complicated parts of anatomy. Look, it's here to simplify it all as much as possible, but I'm going to come down to learning outcomes 17. This was a pet peeve of mine as a student, and I must humble myself and say I didn't like lecturing on the facial nerve either. But this outcome is going to help us with describing the intracranial and intrapetrous course of the facial nerve and its relationship of its major branches to the middle ear in relation to damage of the nerve within the facial canal. So you will see that, yes, the focus of this is the core anatomy, but there is always going to be some clinical application where possible to help students activate those higher order thinking skills. Okay, I actually already have it preloaded in my next pane, but my Teams bar is hiding it from me. So let me quickly adjust my screen. Okay, and we're now going to work through this outcome. So you can see it presents the outcome to me on the left. It breaks down the content by the video, the key structures, the additional content, and the clinical content. While I walk you through this content, I want you to be aware of these features at the bottom. You can share a link to any of this content. So if you have an institutional subscription, you could pop a link to these outcomes in your teaching content or on your LMS to prompt your students to go work through it. Very importantly, you can also embed this entire learning outcome in your learning management for your students. This entire pane with all its interactivity will be embedded in your LMS. Okay, then one thing I want to discuss before we look at this content is number one, this is a really great pre-lecture or pre-dissection tool so that the students can first be acquainted with the content before your lecture or before their tutorial or practical, so that they then come across it for a second time in that contact teaching time or online teaching time, which allows them to learn on a deeper level. Number two, it could be used for a flipped classroom model. If you really want to engage your students' higher order thinking skills when you have that contact time, you can tell them to go through the basics before the lecture, and you can focus on the more application style content or some group activities in your contact time. And thirdly, a wonderful revision tool when students are preparing for a test or an exam, or if students or even practitioners are in the final years of study or in practice and they need to come back and revise their anatomy, this is great for that. I also want to mention that this is not here to replace the role of the educator or the lecturer. You are incredibly, incredibly important. This is here to help make your job easier and to help your students learn on a deep level with pre-lecture and post-lecture, either exposure or revision. And again, you could flip your classroom if you want to. Okay, now let's look at the content. So here we have Dr. Krebs, and she is going to take us through this outcome. And here we have a 12-minute video where she is going to use Primal's amazing 3D visuals, and she's going to take us through the content. So I'm going to press play and I'm going to unmute this, and I'm going to allow us to listen to about 30 seconds of Dr. Krebs' explanation over here, so you get a taste of what these videos look like. I don't think I've shared my screen with audio. I'm quickly going to stop sharing my screen and reshare it so I can make sure you're hearing the audio, because I'm fairly confident you are not. Please bear with me for one short moment. Okay. Now we should receive audio. If you cannot hear the audio now, please someone unmute yourself and let me know.
First part of the temporal bone is fascinating, and a complete understanding is necessary for accurate diagnosis of disorders related to the facial nerve. Let's have a closer look. In this view, most structures have been removed and the temporal bone is ghosted in. You can see.
Okay, I'm going to pause her there, and I'm now going to mute Dr. Krebs. I hope that gives you a taste of what these videos look like. Here for the explanation that Dr. Krebs is giving us, she is using Primal Pictures 3D real-time title. Most of our clients have access to this title, and I hope this looks fairly familiar to you and that you've used this title in the past. This title has great capabilities like the ghosting function, which allows us to see the facial nerve and its divisions moving through the bony components of our cranium, like the petrous part of the temporal bone. Now, what we could do if we want to explore the anatomy with Dr. Krebs at the same time while she gives us the explanation of this outcome, we can change our view and we can make Dr. Krebs a little bit smaller, and we can move her around to wherever is best for us in our workflow. And now we can scroll down to where 3D real-time has been embedded within this learning outcome. All of the key structures that Dr. Krebs is going to walk us through have been linked here at the bottom of this embedded pane. So we can click on these structures and easily follow along with Dr. Krebs. My Wi-Fi is lagging a little bit here, so the structures aren't changing quite yet. Let me just give it a moment to catch up to speed. And while that catches up to speed, I just want to highlight that if anything looks jittery while I show you this content, it's just because I'm sharing my screen over the internet. Things will move nice and smooth and seamlessly for the end user and when you try it yourself. Okay, let's take a look and see if this has loaded a bit better. There we go. Okay, so I don't know if you saw there, my 3D model changed. Let's click on the deep petrosal nerve over here. And there, the deep petrosal nerve has been highlighted for us. We can zoom out of this 3D model if we need to get some context. We can rotate it, and we can also use the tools at the bottom of the screen to remove any structures if we want. So I'm going to hide some of these structures so I can now visualize the nerves without the structures in front of the nerves or surrounding the nerves. If I wanted a pronunciation of this structure, I could click on the speaker icon over here. And if I wanted to revisit the important theoretical knowledge about any structure, I can click on the text box and scroll through this information. Okay, so if you already have 3D real time, all of this functionality that I'm showing you over here, you will already be able to use, just not along with Dr. Krebs' explanatory video. Okay, so we could follow along with her whole video and move through the different structures at the bottom of the screen while we explore the anatomy over here. Okay, so all of these structures are the important components that she discusses in her explanatory video. I'm going to close up this video now, and I want to highlight a few other features of 3D real time, which, oh, I zoomed right in there, which are really helpful. And if you haven't used 3D real time before, I would highly recommend you go and have an exploration of it. So using my mouse and clicking down with my left cursor, I can freely rotate my 3D model. As you saw earlier, I did a bit of a dissection. You can select structures and hide them, and that will dissect those structures away and allow you to move deeper within this anatomical model. And again, please remember, this 3D anatomy has been constructed from real body donors, and this is a real human's anatomy that we are looking at. You could use the list of structures on the right-hand side to create your own custom 3D model. So I could clear this and I could add in any component I so choose at any moment. But in the menu on the left-hand side, if you don't want to sit and create your own 3D model, in the window frame icon, you will find some dissection images and a range of pre-made 3D models where you can choose between 5 different tissue depths. Okay, let's take a quick look at one of the dissection images. I believe that body donor anatomy is very, very important when it comes to studying anatomy. So here in the embedded form, things are a little bit squished, I will be honest, but if you go into 3D real time, on its own, you will have it at full screen capacity and you can engage with the body donor anatomy. And here you can see I have a 3D model that is mirroring my dissection image, which is going to help me interpret and understand the body donor anatomy. Let's zoom in a little bit more and hopefully, no, that's making the interface look a little bit funny. Let's stay where we are. Okay, so that is some of the important functionality of 3D real time. 2 last things actually that I quickly want to highlight. Under settings in 3D real time, you can change your 3D model to body donor colors. So here, this is going to force students to think more critically about the difference between an artery, vein, and nerve based on their anatomy rather than the colors, because our body donors and patients are not color-coded. Okay, and then another important functionality is the labeling section. Here you can add in pins and labels. You can alter what the labels say if you want to create a test question. And you can use the camera icon to download these images to insert them into your PowerPoints or your tests or wherever you would like to use them. Okay, now I'm done with exploring some of the important 3D real-time functionality. So just to recap, Dr. Krebs explained this learning outcome to us. We could then further explore that anatomy on our own or at the same time as her using 3D real-time here at the bottom, where we have our key structures linked for us and we can toggle between these important key structures. Then after that, we will find additional content. Here for this learning outcome, we have another 3D model over here, a bit of a simplified one, which works on a layering system. This 3D model is still interactive, which means we have rollover labels for all of our visible structures, and you can highlight structures. We also have a labeled image and a dissection image over there. And after that, we have some clinical style content or application. The interface has gone a little bit funny with how I've zoomed in, so let me zoom us out for a second. And here I have a video which has been pulled from the diseases and conditions title of Primal Pictures. A majority of our clients do also have access to this title already. In diseases and conditions, there's a lot of video content as well as explanatory style content with images and 3D models. Let me keep this unmuted and let's play a short amount of this video so you get a taste for it before I tell you more of what we'll find in this video.
Injury to the facial nerve, or cranial nerve 7, or to its branches, produces paralysis of some or all of the facial muscles on the affected side. This is known as Bell palsy.
Okay, I'm going to pause it there. But in general, for each of the diseases and conditions that Primal Pictures has, you will get an overview, you'll get the causes, the symptoms, diagnosis, and treatment, and it's going to go through the affected anatomy and some of the pathophysiology for that disease or condition. So now I've learned about my learning outcome, I've explored the anatomy further, I've understood some clinical application of this anatomy learning outcome. And now I can click that I'm completed and I can move on to the next outcome. Our next outcome over here is now taking a look at the TMJ, explaining the movements that occur during mastication and describing the muscles involved and their innervation. So I'm going to spend much less time here. I just want to show you that sometimes the content varies. The previous outcome was based on innervation. Here we have a more muscular outcome. So we have our explanatory video. We have 3D real time where we can load the 3D model that is being used in the video explanation. And here for our additional content, what's really important is understanding these muscles in action and seeing how they work. So here we have some videos which are going to help us understand how these muscles move the mandible during mastication. Let's take a look at another example. These videos have been pulled from the functional anatomy title, if you are aware of it. And just so you know, if you do have access to functional anatomy, not only will you have a video form of these movements, but you'll also have an interactive animation form where you can pause the movement, you can see the labels of the structures, and you can rotate things a bit. Okay, so I think we've discussed how this could be used from the educator's perspective as well as the student's perspective. I want you to be aware that there are going to be further releases to this learning content. In the future, most likely next year, we will see the addition of quizzes at the end of the outcome, which will be multiple choice questions. I actually think they're going to be single best answer questions, but these are still in development, where students can test their knowledge and get feedback to understand, wait, do I know this outcome, or do I need to work through it a little bit more before I continue? And along with that update should come some faculty tracking abilities, where you can see which outcomes your students have worked through, as well as their achievement marks on those quizzes. That's not available yet. That's going to come in the future, and I cannot give you a date at the moment or the exact functionality, but that's a little bit of a taste of what you can expect to see in the future. Okay, that nearly brings me to the end of everything that I wanted to show you today. So let's do a very, very quick recap. Today, we were here to discuss this new release by Primal Pictures, the Anatomy Learning Outcomes for Medicine. I've given you a look at what this content looks like, and I've given you the context of how this content was developed. We're going to reach out to those who indicated that they would like a trial in the registration, and we can discuss setting that up. But if you didn't indicate that, please feel free to pop it in the chat box or email me if you want to discuss further and potentially look at a trial. Before we looked at this, we also recapped how to access Primal Pictures. Just a reminder, when you're on campus and connected to the Wi-Fi, you can go directly to the website. If you are off campus or not connected to the Wi-Fi, please go through your library's webpage where you have your electronic databases. Some of our clients use username and password. If that's your circumstance, you should be aware. But if I have confused you, or if you don't know how to access, I'm here to help, okay? So please just let me know. And then I would like to take a moment to highlight our YouTube channel. Here we have a range of training resources. I would recommend going to our playlist. Here you will find webinar trainings. These are previous webinars that we've run. These are long videos, under an hour, but between 30 minutes and about 55 minutes. Quite importantly, are our title crash course videos. I'm going to come to this playlist and pause my voice over there. Here you will see that we indicate what title or what topic each of these videos goes over. This is a 10-minute video teaching students how to use the anatomy and physiology title. We do also touch on some lecturer capabilities. So these can be really great for yourselves or the students to explore so that you're more empowered to use Primal, and really great to embed in your LMS so that the students can easily access the training resources.